NASCAR explains why they penalized Christopher Bell, and past precedent may suggest what they're going to do next. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Happy Monday, folks. In last night's episode, we recapped all of the late race drama, controversy at Martinsville Speedway, but we didn't really talk about NASCAR's explanation. We never really dove into what might happen next. We'll talk additional details, fallout in just a moment. First, this episode is sponsored by NASCAR Manager. NASCAR Manager is officially licensed. It's a ton of fun. Download for free today and start building your own team. And recently, NASCAR Manager introduced Team Penske, the Wood Brothers, and Spire Motorsports into the game, so you can unlock and hire some of NASCAR's biggest stars. Again, NASCAR Manager is free to download. Click the link down below to learn more. Thanks to NASCAR Manager for sponsoring the show. Before we re-enter the Martinsville Speedway gauntlet, today is the day. This afternoon, there is a preliminary injunction hearing in Charlotte, North Carolina. A federal judge will listen to arguments from both 2311 Racing and Front Row and NASCAR, and then will decide whether or not to grant the injunction. Quick refresher, the teams, 2311 and Front Row, are requesting an injunction that would allow them to race as chartered teams in 2025 as this lawsuit is ongoing. The teams argue that racing as open participants would cause them great financial harm, since open teams do not receive nearly as much of the purse money as chartered teams. They also argue that without this injunction being granted, they could lose their right to sue NASCAR on antitrust grounds. The teams say that Section 10.3 of the new charter agreement prevents teams from suing NASCAR. They also argue that even open teams, non-chartered teams, are forced to agree to NASCAR's terms, and one of NASCAR's terms is you can't sue us. So the teams are arguing that this whole antitrust case could be in jeopardy if this injunction is not granted. NASCAR is arguing that they have already made plans to race with 32 charters next year. This would disrupt the status quo. NASCAR also argues that any financial hit the teams may take could get paid back if the teams ultimately win the lawsuit. That's the conflict in a nutshell. Again, today's hearing is only about the preliminary injunction. The judge does not have to make a decision today. They could wait several days, maybe even multiple weeks. There's no telling. This is just one of the first big dominoes to fall before we really get into the nitty-gritty of this antitrust lawsuit. So we'll have to wait and see what the results turn out to be. In case you somehow missed last night's race or all of the commentary and criticism surrounding it, let me get you up to speed real quick. Ryan Blaney took the lead late from Chase Elliott and won to advance into the championship four. With Blaney out front, William Byron and Christopher Bell were battling for the final championship spot. In the final laps, Byron was only 1 point ahead of Bell. Bell, a lap down, had nobody immediately in front of him to go past, while Byron had a whole gaggle of cars in his rear windshield. Two Chevrolets, Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain, effectively formed a blockade behind William Byron, refusing to pass the 24 car. Over the radio, you could hear someone on Austin Dillon's team mention, "Do they know the deal?" Meanwhile, on a completely opposite end of the track, Bubba Wallace suddenly radios he has a flat tire. He begins slowing in the final laps, allowing his Toyota teammate Christopher Bell to gain a position. But then Christopher Bell overdrives the final corner, hits the wall, gasses it up, rides the fence. The race ends, and thanks to that last lap pass, Christopher Bell is in. Byron is out. But now, NASCAR had several decisions to make. They kept us all in suspense for nearly 30 minutes. Then, they ruled that Christopher Bell would be penalized for riding the outside wall on the final lap. Remember, after Ross Chastain's move in 2022, NASCAR made it very clear you cannot wall ride in the future. That is a safety violation. They say Christopher Bell broke the rules. Byron is now in, Bell is out, and NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition, Elton Sawyer, got to the microphone to explain NASCAR's call.
If you look at the other situations that were going on, 23 and then the the cars behind the 24. Really no bearing at this time. We'll look at those at a later time, but when you really just dissect exactly what happened, look at the situation with the 20 getting up against the fence and then riding the fence, which is we clearly stated in our statement after Ross did that would not be accepted.
I think those comments from Elton Sawyer support the theory I had in last night's episode. I'm sure NASCAR saw the possible manipulation by the 1, the 3, and the 23, but that's such a gray area in the rule book. They decided in the moment to punt that decision down the line a couple of days. Instead, they chose in the moment to only decide on the black and white call, which was Christopher Bell riding the wall. He clearly did, whether he meant to or not. He broke the rules. That's the call NASCAR chose to make. I get why they did it that way. The rule that Austin Dillon, Ross Chastain, and Bubba Wallace allegedly broke is commonly referred to as the 100% rule. This was implemented into the rulebook about a decade ago, post-Spingate 2013, and it's extremely vague. This is how the 100% rule is written. NASCAR requires its competitors to race at 100% of their ability with the goal of achieving their best possible finishing position in the event. Any competitor who takes action with the intent to artificially alter the finishing positions of the event or encourages, persuades, or induces others to artificially alter the finishing positions of the event shall be subject to a penalty from NASCAR. Artificially alter shall be defined as actions by any competitor that show or suggest that the competitor did not race at 100% of their ability for the purpose of changing finishing positions in the event. In NASCAR's sole discretion. If you watched the end of that race, it sure didn't look like Ross Chastain and Austin Dillon were racing at 100% of their ability. But, how easy is that to prove? Yes, this radio transmission from Austin Dillon's team was very suspicious.
If we pass him, he'll be out. Does the one crew chief know the deal? Yeah, he should.
But I can recall an even more damning radio transmission from 4 years ago. 2020, similar situation. Joe Gibbs Racing driver Eric Jones is chasing down his teammate Denny Hamlin, but Denny Hamlin cannot afford to lose any more positions. He's tied on points. So someone comes over Eric Jones's radio and says quite simply, "Don't pass him, Jones." A direct order by the team to the driver to effectively not race at 100% of his ability. But NASCAR did not penalize Eric Jones or Joe Gibbs Racing for that deal. No penalty. And in my opinion, that was far more blatant than anything that was said over Austin Dillon, Ross Chastain, or Bubba Wallace's radios Sunday night. Shout out once again to @Basso488 for uploading the mostly unedited onboard footage and in-car audio from all of the key players. I've watched the Bubba footage, the Chastain footage, the Austin Dillon footage. Chastain's is iffy. At one point, the number 1 spotter does tell him that, hey, the 24 in front of you is only 1 point to the good.
24 is 1 to the good. 1 point to the good. Down there, even. 6 is lined up with the 3.
The Bubba Wallace radio is even more interesting to me. You can hear the crew chief, Booty Barker, presumably on Channel 2, telling the spotter to let Bubba know where the 20 car is.
Tell him how far back the 20 is, Brady.
But the spotter, Freddie Kraft, didn't relay much of that information to the driver. At one point, with close to 10 laps to go, he tells Bubba, the 20 and the 24 are separated by 1 point.
5 back 11, then 10 to the 24. 24 and 20 are separated by a point right now.
Didn't go into any more specifics than that. And then, with about 4 laps to go, Bubba Wallace radios he might have a flat tire. You can see him bobble out of the groove.
I think I got a tire going down. 10-4, just nurse it home.
At one point, the crew chief once again chimes in to remind them that, hey, our teammate had some sort of brake issue earlier in the race.
Tell him the 45 had a fire.
So, when we talk about future penalties, Elton Sawyer said they were going to take a look at all this audio, the data, make a decision Tuesday, Wednesday. When we're talking about future penalties this week, I think you could make a serious case that nobody gets penalized, not even a fine. Reportedly, NASCAR did take a close look at the 23 car post-race. If they found damage somewhere, something broken, I don't think there's any way you can give Bubba Wallace and 2311 a penalty. But if they find nothing notably wrong with the 23, then okay, yeah, they probably get a penalty, because we saw in 2022, Cole Custer laid over at the Roval for his teammate Chase Briscoe and got hit with like a $100,000 fine, a big points penalty. So NASCAR certainly looks at someone laying over differently than someone not passing a car. NASCAR seems to view those kinds of situations differently. I'm not sure that I agree, but that's the precedent that has been established. I know we've had a night to sleep on it, but it still feels like there's a lot of pent-up angst in the NASCAR community this morning. It's relatively easy to identify potential problems. It's the format is the reason for this. It's manufacturer alliances. It's my argument. I think there's truth to the other two as well, but my main argument would be that the big problem is the teams do not respect NASCAR Race Control's authority. NASCAR has always been hands-off compared to most other major motorsports. They don't like to police aggressive driving. They rarely step in. They don't want to make the tough call. That's why teams keep putting NASCAR in these tough spots. It's an intentional strategy. Put NASCAR in the awkward position of having to make the tough call. Late in the season like this, with so much on the line, odds are they won't. I think about the original Hail Mellon, no call. Carson Hocevar taking out his chief championship rival, no call. Denny Hamlin jumping the restart at Richmond, no call. Bubba Wallace allegedly letting Christopher Bell go by, no call there. Dillon, Chastain, knowing the deal, forming a blockade, no call. Even the Austin Dillon deal at Richmond, sure. On Wednesday, NASCAR took away the points, but Race Control didn't make that call. I'm not saying NASCAR never makes the difficult call. Shoot, I commended them last week for parking Connor Jones 2 laps in the truck race for aggressive driving. But it feels 50-50. And again, the later you get in the season, when every point, every position, every race is more heavily scrutinized, when there's even more at stake, I think it's less likely NASCAR Race Control makes the tough call. The teams know that. And that's the main reason I believe you saw Toyota and Chevy allegedly trying to manipulate the finish of Sunday night's race. I think it's far less likely that happens if NASCAR takes a firmer stance on incidents in the recent past. Like I said, it's easy to point at maybe the problems. It's a lot harder to find a reasonable solution. I'll go back to the 10-race chase. Oh, you mean like the format that allowed Spingate to still happen? I mentioned, manufacturer and team alliances. Like, I don't like team orders or manufacturer orders in NASCAR, but how do you stop it? In my opinion, the 3 and the 1 opting to not pass the 24 isn't that different than teammates staying in line at Daytona or Talladega. I mean, it's a little different, I guess, but like, how do you stop that? Teammates cut each other breaks all the time, even in the regular season. Do we have a problem with it then? Not really. I get that in the playoffs, where every round is like a 3-race mini season, every race is more important, every single position on the track is more heavily scrutinized, everything is under a microscope under this format. I completely get that. But maybe I'm sounding too defeated here. I don't know how you stop that. The playoffs aren't going away. NASCAR's not getting rid of the 10-race chase playoffs, at least not until the next TV deal, which is 7+ years away. That's just not realistic. So it's easy to identify possible problems. It's a lot harder to find a solution. The 100% rule, I read it to you earlier, is kind of vague. Austin Dillon, Ross Chastain, they were not racing at 100% of their ability at the end of that race, but past precedent suggests that shouldn't be a penalty. That just shows you how vague that rule is written. So it's tough. Just my Monday morning thoughts here spilled out onto the screen for y'all. My guess is that Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever they choose to announce it, I don't think Dillon or Chastain will be penalized. Again, Eric Jones, don't pass him, Jones, got no penalty. I think the only way Bubba Wallace gets a penalty is if NASCAR examined the car and found no issues. But if there was something broken, and again, his teammate did have a devastating mechanical failure earlier in the race, if there's an issue on his car, I don't think he gets a penalty either. I think odds are there are no penalties handed out Tuesday, Wednesday. That's my guess. Obviously, I haven't examined the 23 car with my own eyes. I can't say for sure, but that's just my guess right here, right now. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my analysis. I think it was important today to look back at some recent examples when trying to figure out what NASCAR is going to decide this week. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Leave a like on this video, helps me out a ton. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk all NASCAR all the time on this show. Big thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters. I'll see y'all later this week. Have a great rest of your Monday, folks. Talk to you again soon.